What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. I've talked about defensemen in some of my previous videos, but I haven't made an official must-draft defenseman video yet, so here it is. These defensemen I'm about to talk about, I've drafted the most on Drafters Fantasy Sports, which, by the way, only has 1,400 spots left in the $11 Drafters NHL Best Ball Championship. I'm going to be live streaming every day up until the start of the season, which is October 4th, doing these drafts, and you can use promo code / referral code FIREDUP for 100% match deposit up to $100. There's still time to do these drafts and potentially win the grand prize of $10K. And you can also do really sick pick'ems like this one. This is an 8-legger, $10 to win 1,000. Comment below which players are going to sell. With that out of the way, guys, let's talk about my favorite defenseman to draft in 2024 fantasy hockey. The first defenseman is not necessarily a must-draft defenseman, but they're definitely a sleeper that may provide a lot of value in your later rounds. This player is Jake Walman of the San Jose Sharks. What you need to know about Walman is that in 22-23, he pays for 11 goals, and then in 23-24 last season, he pays for 15. Yes, he had a high shooting percentage, but the fact is that he is putting up this amount of goals despite limited ice time and virtually no power play time. You guys can see he's had 21 goals in the last 126 games, and only one of them came from the power play. He was stuck behind Seider and Gustafsson on Detroit, so he wasn't able to get power play time. But going to the San Jose Sharks, he could be on that first unit. There's no guarantee, guys. It could be Henry Thrun, but we are seeing him get some reps on the first unit in camp, and I think that's pretty promising. That's not the only positive thing for Walman with this move to the Sharks. He could also see an increase in even strength minutes. He never averaged more than 20 minutes a game on the Red Wings, but there's a chance on the Sharks he can get 22 minutes of ice time per night. We also have to talk about Walman's peripherals. Last year, he paced for 196 blocks, which was absolutely elite. I will say that his hits aren't great, but his blocks definitely are. And his shot volume is very good too. In 22-23, despite averaging 19 minutes and 43 seconds of ice time per game, he was on pace for 182 shots. If we see the deployment increase that I'm expecting, there's a chance these shots and blocks get even better. I want to let you guys know that I'm not expecting Walman to have this crazy season, not really expecting more than 40 points, but the fact is that he is going so late in drafts, and considering all the things I talked about, I think he could be a massive steal. Starting off with the official list of my favorite defensemen to draft, the first player I want to talk about is Justin Faulk of the St. Louis Blues. The reasoning for Faulk is extremely simple. His ADP on Yahoo is 167.1, and this is far too late. The fact is that with Torrey Krug out for the entire season, there is an open spot on this first power play unit, and it's Faulk's spot to lose. Since joining the Blues, Faulk has been behind Krug in the pecking order, and he hasn't been able to get the same power play deployment that he got on the Hurricanes. As you guys can see though, despite this, he's put up very impressive even strength production. He had 50 points in 82 games in 22-23, with only 10 coming from the man advantage. He also had 47 points in 76 games in 21-22, with only 7 of these points coming from the man advantage. In that season, he had 16 goals in 76 games, with only 1 power play goal, so yeah, this guy's been a beast even strength, and now this season, he's going to get more power play time. Faulk is also a defenseman who puts up elite peripherals. As you guys can see, Faulk is consistently paced for 100 plus blocks, 115 plus hits, and there's also a lot of seasons where he puts up a lot of shots as well. If your league values any 2 of those 3 peripherals, Faulk has a massive edge against so many players in fantasy. In conclusion, Faulk is a massive sleeper in your upcoming drafts. I'm drafting him on a lot of platforms, and I suggest you do it as well. The next must-draft defenseman is Mikhail Sergachev of the Utah Hockey Club. This one is very simple. Sergachev is only 26 years old, just signed a big contract with Utah, and in camp, he is quarterbacking that first-line power play. This power play was 15th best in the NHL last year, and they only had half a season with Gunther, and they had Dursey quarterbacking that unit. With that being said, there's a chance his power play improves more with having a full season of Gunther, and now having Sergachev. This means Sergachev has very good power play point potential, and also even strength potential as well, because he's going to be a top pairing defenseman. Not only is his point potential very good, but we also have to talk about his peripherals. Sergachev has consistently put up a lot of hits and a lot of blocks, and I think his shot volume is going to be around 175 this year, so you're getting that massive advantage over a lot of players. Yes, it depends on league settings, but most leagues count at least 2 of the 3 major peripherals. So he's going to have that edge. He's going to have that point potential. He's going to have that power play deployment. And he is a young defenseman who could break out as well and take another step forward. So with all that being considered, I am a massive fan of drafting Sergachev. The next must-draft defenseman is Seth Jones of the Chicago Blackhawks. And in my opinion, he is a massive value at his ADP. It depends what platform you're on, but currently on Yahoo, his ADP is 152.6, and I think this is far too late. The fact is that Seth Jones puts up amazing peripherals. He can put up 200 plus shots, he can put up 150 blocks, and he can put up 100 plus hits as well. This will give him a massive edge in a lot of leagues, but he also has point potential as well. Jones has had multiple seasons where he's paced for 10 plus goals and 50 plus points, And even last year, despite being on one of the worst teams in the NHL, he still pays for 10 goals and 37 points. With that being said, we know the Blackhawks went out and improved their roster. They got Bertuzzi, they got Teravainen, Hall's back from injury, and they're getting Bedard going into his second year. There's a very good chance that with these new additions, their power play improves and their even strength play improves as well, and that's going to improve Jones' production. Ultimately, he's a massive steal at his ADP. He has a safe floor with his peripherals, and I think he's going to put up more points than last season, so I suggest you draft Seth Jones. The number 2 must-draft defenseman is Noah Hanifin of the Vegas Golden Knights. The reason I'm a big fan of Hanifin is because we got confirmation a couple of days ago that Cassidy expects Hanifin to be quarterback in that first unit. Yes, he said that Theodore is going to get his looks, but his expectation is Hanifin to be quarterback in that unit. And we saw that last year when he got traded from the Flames to Vegas, not only at the end of the regular season, but also in the playoffs. We also know that Vegas locked up Hanifin long-term, and they're generally pretty conservative about giving out big contracts. So that is even further incentive for them to put him on this first unit. And we also know that Theodore is in his contract year. There's a very good chance that Vegas does not want to pay Theodore the money that he's looking for. And for that reason, they're probably going to let him walk. If they know Theodore is not part of their long-term plans, there's no reason to put him on that first unit. They should get Hanifin the reps. They should get him that experience. And he is going to be the guy that's going to be quarterbacking the power play for many years to come. So they're going to probably do that. The last thing that we have to mention about Hanifin is that he has had very impressive production despite limited power play points and despite limited minutes. If we see a full season of Hanifin on Vegas, getting 23 plus minutes and quarterbacking the first unit, there's a chance he puts up 60 points. We will see what happens, but Hanifin is currently going later than Theodore on Yahoo. His ADP is 113.8, and this could end up being fantastic value. My number 1 must-draft defenseman in 2024 fantasy hockey is Dougie Hamilton of the New Jersey Devils. Not only am I expecting Hamilton to have a fantastic season, but on so many platforms, he is fantastic value at his current ADP. You can see on Yahoo that his ADP is 65.6, which makes him the 11th defenseman off the board. To me, this is insane value because I think there's a chance Hamilton could be a top 3 defenseman in fantasy hockey. This is no surprise if you've been following Hamilton's career. He is an elite offensive player. He's just not been able to stay healthy. The reason why Hamilton is going much later than he has in previous years is because last season he tore his pec, and he also got taken off the first unit in favor of Luke Hughes. The good thing for Hamilton, though, is that Luke Hughes this season is much less of a concern than last year. Luke Hughes injured his shoulder in the offseason, and he's not expected to be back until sometime in November. So for the first month or so of the season, Hamilton's going to be quarterback in that first unit. I already thought that Hamilton was going to be on this first unit to begin with, but the truth is that if this power play is clicking for the first month, there's no reason to take Hamilton off even when Luke Hughes comes back. This is a power play with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Timo Meier on it, so there's a very good chance that if they all stay healthy, this is a top 5 power play in the NHL. And guess what, guys? We saw when Hamilton was quarterback in this first unit in 22-23 that he put up monster numbers. In 82 games that season, he had 22 goals and a total of 74 points. He also put up 275 shots as well. If we're looking at Yahoo default points league settings, this made Hamilton the 3rd best defenseman in fantasy points per game that season, only behind Roman Josi and Cale Makar. Now, is there some risk that Luke Hughes comes back and they put him back in the first unit? Yes, there is some risk that that happens, but ultimately, I think Hamilton is a much needed right-handed shot on that power play. And we also have a new head coach in Sheldon Keefe, who doesn't necessarily have the same philosophy as Lindy Ruff. We will see what happens, but he has goal scoring potential that so many defensemen don't have. He has the shot volume that so many defensemen don't have, and he is going to be playing on one of the best offensive teams in the NHL and the Devils. So there's just so much upside from his current ADP. Okay, that was the official list, but I just want to talk about 2 defensemen that are must-draft defensemen in leagues that count hits. And the first defenseman is Mikhail Weegar of the Calgary Flames. The truth is that in category leagues, Weegar is one of the best defensemen, and in any points league that counts hits, he is a massive value at his current ADP. He had 208 shots last year, 200 blocks, and 194 hits, so he has a massive advantage over so many players. This is also a guy who got on the first line power play last year, and that power play was on fire as soon as they put him on. With that being said, there's a very good chance that he's put on this first line power play again. And we have to recognize that he was not on this first line power play for the majority of the season. Despite this, he still put up 20 goals and a total of 52 points in 82 games. So there's also a potential that he could put up more points if he was quarterback in this unit for the entire year. Yes, I'm expecting goal scoring regression because he had the highest shooting percentage of his career. But the truth is that throughout his entire NHL career, he has had very impressive production despite limited power play time. With this power play time, there is some mystery upside, and I think there's a good chance he can still put up 15 goals, 50 plus points, and monster peripherals. So If your league counts hits, you need to draft him. With that being said, if your league counts hits, you need to target Rasmus Dahlin. Dahlin has a massive edge in leagues that count shots, hits, and blocks, so you may be able to get him at a value depending on how casual your league mates are. And he's also a guy that's on the first line power play and getting top pairing minutes on a team that I'm pretty high on. I think their power play is going to bounce back with their new coaching staff, a lot of young players that are due to break out, and there's a chance that Dahlin puts up 65 plus points, 15 plus goals with elite shots, hits, and blocks. So he could end up being a top 2 or top 3 defenseman depending on your league settings. With that being said, if you're in a different type of league that doesn't count hits and it doesn't heavily value shots and blocks, one defenseman who may end up being really good value is Erik Gustafsson of the Detroit Red Wings. I've talked about Gustafsson quite a bit in previous videos, but we're seeing in camp, as many of us expected, him being on that first unit. As long as he stays healthy, I'm expecting him to be on this first unit for the entire season. And this Detroit power play last season was 9th best in the NHL. With this power play deployment, there's a chance that Gustafsson could put up 50 plus points, and he is currently going very late on a lot of platforms. So if your league doesn't heavily value peripherals, I suggest you target him. Okay, last but not least, we have to talk about my 2 favorite breakouts. Those breakouts being Adam Boqvist of the Florida Panthers and Brandt Clarke of the Los Angeles Canes. I talked about these guys in my most recent video, and I talked about Boqvist quite a bit, so I'll keep this short. But we're seeing in camp that Boqvist is quarterbacking that first unit with Barkov, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, and Matthew Tkachuk. So that means he has a ton of value. Yes, he's made of glass. Yes, his peripherals won't be the greatest. And yes, this is only training camp still. But the fact is that if Boqvist is on this power play, a power play that was 8th best in the NHL last year, there's a very good chance that he puts up 10 plus goals and 50 plus points. He may go very late in your drafts, and he may be on the waiver wire as well, depending on your league. So please take a look at him. I've already talked about Brandt Clarke in my last video, but we know Doughty's injured. We know that they need a new defenseman to quarterback that first unit. And what we're seeing in camp is Clarke getting those reps. Not only is he likely going to be quarterbacking this first unit, but he's going to see top 4 pairing minutes, even strength. So there is a lot of upside with this player, and we know that he's a very talented offensive defenseman. I also want to let you guys know that Clarke loves to shoot the puck. In fact, last year, with a minimum of 15 games played, Clarke was 2nd in shots per 60. There's a chance that Clarke can put up 200 plus shots this year, and that's going to give him a massive advantage over a lot of players, depending on your league. For example, guys, Adam Boqvist, I just talked about, his shot volume may not be very good, so there's a chance that Clarke may have an advantage over a player like that. Clarke also may have a big advantage over players like Erik Gustafsson, Shane Gostisbehere, and others when it comes to the shot volume, guys. So that's one edge that he has. And there's a lot of mystery upside with this new deployment that he's going to be receiving. So I would absolutely target him in your upcoming drafts, and he could be really good for this year. One last thing I need to say here, guys, is that when I'm saying must draft defenseman, I'm talking about value. Obviously, this doesn't really need to be said, but I'm still a massive fan of Makar, Josi, Bouchard, and some of those other defensemen going early. In fact, Bouchard is my 2nd most drafted defenseman on Drafters Fantasy Sports. So I still like drafting those guys. I just wanted to talk about defensemen in this video that have a lot of upside from their ADP. I also want to talk about strategy a little bit. It really depends on your league mates, like how casual they are. And it also depends on your league settings in terms of peripherals. But the drafts that I do, I tend to draft elite defensemen early. That is what I normally do. I like drafting elite defensemen that put up good peripherals that I can just have with that positional scarcity, giving myself a massive advantage over a lot of my league mates. But it depends, right? If your league heavily values peripherals, you can get guys later that are going to provide similar value to guys like Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox, Miro Heiskanen, and others. Ultimately, for me, the reason why I draft elite defensemen early is because I know I can find really good value at forward in my later rounds, and I can get them as steals. And also, throughout the year on the wire, it's much easier to find value among forwards versus defensemen. That's just one strategy, but it depends how casual your league mates are, because if I'm playing with really sharp players, which I am in some leagues, I might not do that. On the other hand, with my high school buddies, I know I can find crazy values at forwards later. So I'll grab Bouchard and Dahlin in my, 3rd and 4th round or 2nd and 3rd round, and get those elite defensemen and just grab those steals at forward in my later rounds. The last thing I wanted to talk about is Erik Karlsson. The only update that we have on him right now is that he's considered day-to-day with an upper body injury, and he is currently not skating. So it's getting a little bit concerning that he may miss a season opener. I still think Karlsson could have a big season, but this is a little bit concerning for me, so I don't know if I'm willing to draft him at his current price. With that being said, I would still draft him if he fell a little bit, but it really depends how far he falls in your draft, and I wouldn't be reaching for him at this current moment. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one.